2020. All of rugby was thrown on hold for months on end in sheer shock after Scotland beat France. Carlos Spencer's bin men learnt to really hate him, and Teddy Thomas did this. But in amongst the lows, the other lows, and the a global pandemic, it was a year, 2020 was a year in which some rugby was played by some people, and that is more accurate a statement than it ever has been before. So I think it's high time, it's finally really time to celebrate what rugby we did get to see when locked in amongst barrels of toilet roll. That's right, it's time for the 2020 Squidge Rugby Team of the Year. But before we get going, it's probably time to acknowledge that this is a really weird year. In case you hadn't noticed, it's been a really strange year. Last year's team was dominated by Springboks because, you might remember they won a World Cup. And yet, those world champions haven't played a single game since. Whilst there has been Super Rugby Unlocked in the Currie Cup, this team, as ever, is more heavily weighted towards higher intensity competition. So Test Rugby trumps all else, but performances in the likes of Super Rugby Aotearoa and the European Champions Cup will certainly, make my eyes peek up, have a look. There's also been a really unfortunate shortage of Tier 2 competition this year, with Georgia being the only smaller nation to really play anything resembling a full schedule. We didn't get to see the likes of Samoa or Tonga at all. All of this will unfortunately affect who can fairly make the final 15 because, as ever, this is not a list of the 15 best players in the world circa 2020, nor is it those who had objectively the best year. It's a who's who of players who stood up and stood out, who shone brighter than we might have expected. But most importantly, those who made us feel more than any others. Over the next week, I'm going to cover all 15 positions over the course of 6 videos, and then I'll be doing the now annual, Squidge Awards in their own extra video out the other end. So, without further ado, it's time to begin the 2020 Squidge Rugby Team of the Year by talking about the best tight-up big boys. It's the front row of the year. 3 years ago, Rory Sutherland was in a wheelchair. Just as he'd made Edinburgh's first team and the Scotland squad for the first time, he started to feel an enormous pain in his lower abdomen. But desperate not to slip into obscurity just as he was getting his shot in professional rugby, he told nobody, opting to continue hitting scrums and rucks until it simply became too much. It was an injury that may have caused many to retire, but Sutherland kept going. He fought his way back into an Edinburgh shirt first, and then into the starting lineup during the World Cup, and then performed so well he made the Scotland squad once again and was able to win his first cap in 3.5 years against Ireland in Scotland's first game post-World Cup. He was outstanding. He was really good. And then again and again and again he remained outstanding. He started all but one of Scotland's matches in 2020 and shone in every single one. His scrummaging has been fantastic, helping the Scots to that famous win over France, a first win in Wales since he was in primary school, and pushing England and Ireland so agonizingly close. Sutherland's story doesn't define the player he is. It explains it. A hard worker constantly learning and not quitting until he's got what he's due, be it a starting shirt, a turnover ball, or a destructive scrum penalty. To many, the casual viewer, these performances came out of nowhere, but to Sutherland, it was a long time coming, and no less than he deserved. Jamie George is an odd little contradiction. To glance at him, he is the exact image of a second team player. He has the face, headband and at-a-glance build of the bloke in the office who everyone mentally tucks away as the rugby guy. The one person who can come in for black eye on a Monday and nobody flinches, nobody asks a single question. He's who Luke from marketing talks to about that one Six Nations game he happened to catch in a pub over the weekend. And he's who gets sent down whenever there's a heavy delivery on the ground floor. And yet, to see him play, Jamie George is the exact image of the modern player. Immensely disciplined, quick, hard-working, skillful, powerful, accurate in line and decision-making, aware, reads the game better than almost anyone in his position, great scrummager, great carrier, turnover threat, and great blank clear-out man. In equal measure, very, very solid pass of the ball, the real complete package. No one is necessarily queuing up to call Jamie George the best rugby player on the planet, probably because he isn't Fijian, but if I were picking a World 15, or indeed a Lions 15, he would be the first name I'd jot down, the surest shot, the safest bet, the rugby guy from the office who could, the perfect hooker for the modern game, and possibly the safest inclusion in 2020's Team of the Year. 2020 has been the year Kyle Sinclair went from hugely powerful, intimidating enemy in a video game with one flashing red weak spot to bullshit level good, unbeatable final boss you rage quit on then just go to bed. 2019 might have felt like his year, but 2020 was the year he added consistency and discipline to his dynamism. However, whilst consistency and discipline are good and all, 2020 has also been the year where Taniela Tupo blew up everything within a 30-mile radius of him at any time. When Tupo first emerged, he was a reckless carry and a kind of hopeless scrummager, for honest, but he's now evolved into close to his final form, a talismanic presence in the loose who could barrel over the Kremlin if he saw it in an all-black shirt, and a pretty excellent scrummager and workhorse in the tight. The Tongan Four, as we still apparently call him, was immense in Australia's win over their trans-Tasman rivals, scoring the try that sealed it, and then was a real high point in Super Rugby AU, making the most of the bullshit stupid rule change I hated, and giving himself a few 50-metre run-ups into an oncoming defence. Tupo is just a massive bundle of explosive energy, and he always looks so delighted to be tearing shit up. There hasn't been a tight head that I was this personally excited to see on a team sheet since Adam Jones. 2019 Tupo was a fun sideshow, but 2020 Tupo is the main attraction. He's become one of those players who makes you put on a game just because they're playing. If you're filling out the forms for who Jamie George puts his arm around in that word 15 when they come to pack down for that first scrum, Kyle Sinclair may want a word. But if you're picking the guy who just ripped up the most trees and then ate them whole in 2020, look no further than living gunpowder barrel Taniela Tupo. The other contenders, Loosehead was fairly competitive. Joe Moody showed up well, as did Makavanapola when fit, but he had a few injury problems. Keegan Healy has meanwhile gone through some sort of career renaissance of late, hitting his best form for club and country alike in years. Scott Sayo has really come of age for the Wallabies the last 18 months and continued where he left off after a personally very impressive World Cup, and George likewise has some very stern competition at hooker, not least from the enormously underrated Julien Marchand, who was stellar for France and yet somehow got lost in amongst the chat about Shat's brick neck. Fellow Julien Montoya has been beyond brilliant for Los Pumas, while Dane Cole showed there's life in the old grub yet, doing so many very Dane Cole things, namely scoring some cool tries and being a grub. As for tight heads, I mentioned Sinclair, and he was the real other stand-up tight head, having been fantastic for England and settling well at Bristol. France women have had a rotating trio of tight heads throughout the year in Clara Joyot, Rose Bernadou and Anna Odeshe, and whichever one's been on the park at that minute has basically just destroyed everything before them, while Shona Brown has established herself really, really well, stealing the starting shirt away from last year's entry in this shirt, Sarah Byrne, who has had to settle this year for being destructive off the bench. But there is one other man who I think deserves real props in the prop position, and for me, that's Mr. Francisco Gomez Codea. Now, if ever there was proof that propping is an old man's game, it was him. Having won a smattering of caps between 2008 and 2013, Gomez Codea was recalled for his 12th cap, aged 35. And he only went and beat the bloody All Blacks, dominating their scrum throughout the game. Who knows if he's got much life left in him yet, but he was mightily impressive All Rugby Championship, having picked up so many tricks across his 8 years in the wilderness. I wouldn't bet against him rocking up to 2023 as the oldest man in the tournament, ready to destroy scrums before him. It's that time of year again. This is how my New Year's begin, apparently, every single year. So Happy New Year, that's the first thing. I hope you had a very Merry Christmas. And beyond that, the next one will be on the second rows. I'm just going to run through them in numerical order this year, just from 1 to 15. So I hope you enjoy that. That'll be up tomorrow. That is the plan, to run one each day. We are 1 down, we are 6 to go. This is how my years begin, which is surely a lot of fun. Thank you very much, and I'll see you tomorrow for the second rows of the